Hello, hello, hello. This is Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. Welcome to your listener. I'm super excited today to welcome our guest, Mary, and I already forgot how to pronounce your last name.
Fineis.
Mary Fineis. Sorry. And you wouldn't believe it, listener, but I've known Mary for a bunch of years now, but I've never had to say her last name. So I'm not saying it right. Anyway, Mary is a wonderful colleague, friend, guest, partner in crime in doing the work that we do and working with managers and leaders to become the best bosses possible. Mary brings a really fascinating slice of how to work with yourself and leading yourself, but also leading others, because she works in the field of sports psychology and sports performance. So really delighted to bring Mary in and share her wisdom with you all. So before I read a little bit about Mary's bio, just want to get Mary's voice in the room. Mary, welcome. So good to have you here.
Yeah, Danny, thanks so much for having me. I really, really, really appreciate it. Thanks.
My pleasure. Our pleasure. Delighted. So here's a little bit about Mary. So Mary, with over 3 decades of business and coaching experience, including 20 years corporate experience at General Motors, Mary Fineis offers a unique skill set and passion for the game of life. Mary is a life leadership and sports performance coach and the owner of Game Changer Coaching, LLC. She works closely with clients at various levels through college and beyond to become their best authentic self, execute a personal success formula, reach goals, and develop a mindset that leads to improvement and enjoyment every day. Mary helps clients apply the essential principles of success in sports and in life to make their visions a reality, including the concepts, exercises, and experiences that are needed to reach peak performance for the short term, the long term, and in the moment success. Mary, welcome, welcome, welcome. Delighted to have you here.
Thanks, Danny.
Excellent. So Mary, is there anything else that you want to tell us about your background before we get going into some curiosity questions I have for you?
I think one key thing I want to share, like right off the bat, is how I have learned that business and those experience, they translate to sports, and sports translates to business and life. And a quick story was I graduated from Michigan State in supply chain. Actually, I also have my MBA from there. And I was working for General Motors, was my first job. I was on the floor, a pretty big job right out of college, 60 employees, and I'm coaching them and leading them and supervising them. And after about 6 months, the superintendent of the plant and the personnel director called me up to their office, and big executive office, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, why are they calling me up there, right?
Yeah.
And I sat down and they said, okay, we want to know your path to getting here, because you're on the job 6 months and you're already supervising 60 employees, all of them way older than I was. And what I realized from that is like I reflected on my sports experience and I shared that with them. And they actually wanted me to know about other athletes that I might recommend to the organization as a result. So those things that I learned in sports, I don't know that I even realized back then how they translated to my whatever I do in my work, in my personal life. And it's a story I love to share with the student athletes because it makes it so real. Like, this is more than just the sport. This is about me and what I'm going to do potentially for the rest of my life.
Interesting. Yeah. It's a couple of things I'm thinking about. So it does remind me of the expression, how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So to kind of fine tune how we're working on something really kind of pushes out to the rest of our life. And it also, I'm probably more athletic now as a 60-year-old man than I was growing up. So I don't think I learned all those lessons. I'm learning lessons now, but I'm wondering, Mary, what are some of the things that they were talking about and that you shared with them and that you can share with us that are really helpful in understanding how sports lessons, athletic performance lessons, can be translated into professional success?
Right. I think one key thing that stands out for me, and I remember learning this because I was fortunate enough to have a pretty nice starting job of supervising, although challenging,
I bet.
60
Yes.
employees. I was creating my leadership style and I was learning it. And so when I reflect back, it's this concept of develop your own success formula, like how you want to be and what works for you. Like this applies in sports and even in my leadership training, and do it holistically. Like so often we think of it only in terms of the skill. So when I say holistic, I mean so physically or your skills, make sure you know what you're good at and what you need to work on
Mm-hmm.
and why you're good at that so you repeat it. And then a part of that too is when you show up, how much sleep do I need? What's my best nutrition? This is holistic approach to performance, right? I need to stay hydrated. People have told me the whole hydration thing is a game changer.
No kidding. Huh.
Very interesting, and that implies whether we're leading in the
Yeah.
in the office environment, in Zoom, or on the athletic field.
Right. Yeah.
So that, and then the whole mental mindset. I really like to relate it to what works for you, because we all have different ways that our mind works. Like a really good example would be often we talk about a positive mindset, and many people can really embrace that. And then starting out, I might have a few people that kind of think positivity is Pollyanna. And so what would work for them? Well, let's look at things optimistically. Like what would be an optimistic way? If you don't want to go positive, let's just start with optimistic. So my point is
Yeah.
find out what works for you. Other examples of that might be how it really helps you to be in the moment. Some people, there's different things they do mentally that really help them be in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Or the idea of how I think impacts how I feel, impacts how I act. Or I think final one would be, this was a big one when I would ask, and it applies to business too. When I would ask the student athlete after they made a huge jump in performance, like let's say in a race they PR'd, I said, "What was the key?" And I cannot tell you how many times they told me, I finally realized it's going to be okay no matter what."
Mm-hmm.
Whoa. If every time we go into a big meeting and realize I'm going to give my best effort in this moment and whatever happens, it's going to be okay because I'm going to learn from it. So it's really knowing what works for you and then you can repeat it.
That's
And then, like
powerful.
emotionally, how do you like to feel? Do you like to be calm or do you like energy? And then socially, how do you best interact with people? How do you want to lead? And what feels right for you? Again,
Mm-hmm.
so you can repeat what helps you be successful. Spiritually, why are you doing it? Like, why do you do what you do? Because that creates the fire in your belly, right? I mean, some kids play sports for different reasons and get great results, and yet they're driven by something different. So know what drives you. Like we talk about purpose, those are all very important. Relative to this in your success formula, you can call it purpose. I would have you go further and say, what lights you up?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
Like even in me and my job, like
Mm-hmm.
I could have stayed in corporate and I went this route. And what lights me up is making a difference in young people's lives, and
Mm-hmm.
they'll have
Mm-hmm.
it for the rest of their life.
So really excellent stuff. Really, really thank you. And it's, I think there's a lot of, well, this is what you do to be a great leader. You do X, Y, and Z. And you're saying, and I think rightfully so, to yes, there's a lot of wisdom in those books, those plans, how we do things, and to make sure that it really matches up with your own success DNA, your own success formula, right? So I love that. What do you do? So and I can, whether we're talking about an athlete or we're talking about a manager, it's the same thing in a lot of ways. What is it that lights you up about this work? And then do more of that. And one of the most important things is just get clear on what it is, right? So yeah, not be told what it is, but what it really is.
And then just think about that. If you really embrace that, you show up authentically and with confidence. because
Yeah.
you are being true to who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. So the question, it's the big rub when we do this work is I am a manager and a leader in an organization. I don't have all the autonomy that maybe I think I need in order to choose how I show up at work, right? I'm being told what needs to happen. I'm being told. So how does one manage that? So you know what I'm saying? So it's the
I
two different.
do. I do. And what's so interesting for me, even in preparing, and in this, because I actually love business and actually thought I was going to do that route. Although I do have my own business.
Yeah, you kind of
I'm
are.
in corporate. I really thought I would go back. And then again, this all evolved. So my answer to you is similar to an athlete. We're talking leaders now. I have what I call a success path, right? What's your journey to being successful? Well, one is create the vision of who you want to be for you, and maybe even including the requirements of the organization or the
Hmm.
goals of the organization and how you want to meet them. And and we start out with this, and you've probably, I mean, this has been said before, truly knowing, beginning with the end in mind. So
Mm-hmm.
let's say it's a fiscal year, however you're managed. It's at the day after the end of the year. And what happened? What do you want to have happen? What do you want to look like as a leader? Be as a leader? What do you want to have happen? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What's accomplished? So get that vision clear. I mean, I that is so important to know who you want to be. And sometimes we don't take the time to do it at a detailed enough level. Like I even learned this with the student athletes. Like they may say they want to accomplish something, and yet how it looks, they haven't even thought about. Well, I really do want to show up this way. Whoa, then we make that a goal. So it's crazy how what the vision is. And then that helps you think about basically, okay, who am I? Well, what are my values? What are my strengths? What are my opportunities? In other words, what can I work on and improve on? What holds me back? Like know yourself and then develop a plan, a holistic plan to meet that vision. And, then, and it's right. We think of that often with business. It's no different. I mean, that's basically what we do with student athletes to take them to achieve amazing things that they never thought possible, sometimes even exceeding the vision. And what this does though is it makes us focus on what's most important. Because if we're not focusing on the most important stuff, no wonder we're getting distracted.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
can't do
Yeah.
10 things, pick the top 3 or, whatever, and work on those, and those will be the things that you get better at. So what that really works,
Mm.
and I can't tell you how many great stories there are of student athletes who exceeded their vision because they were focused on goals and process and not outcome. This is
Ah.
another key thing. How do I create the outcome? Well, don't look at that. That can put the fire in your belly.
Mhm.
You got to look at what creates that. How for an athlete it would be, um, how am I practicing? Am I doing competitive practice? Let's translate this over to business. You might look at your daily routine or your weekly routine or how you're measuring your results in terms of what are the most important processes. I did a lot of projects at GM, and one of my favorite examples is I was put on one that no one would really want to be put on. It was over budget, behind schedule, and there were a lot of problems. And we just had a great team. It was a great team, and we went ahead of schedule, under budget, and very high customer satisfaction. And it was focusing on the most important things and just
Yeah.
doing daily looking at what we're doing well, um, what we can improve on, right? And what our lessons learned are so we can apply them.
I love that. Yeah, I love it. Is this this approach how you So you work with your clients, right? Whether they're student athletes or they're leaders or managers. Is this how you apply it to your life?
For sure.
Yeah.
It's so funny because my background is in supply chain, which is really process management. And so, yeah, talk to my kids and my husband, and I just think in a process way.
Yes. Yes. I love this. I love that.
And it's also the concept of learning and getting a little bit better every day. So you're not I don't I'm not saying I'm not disappointed in some of the outcomes I might have.
Mhm.
If you look at it like, what can I learn from this?
Mhm.
It is what it is, and then move on. Then there's no negative energy, right? It's like I'm already looking at what I learned, what I did
Mhm.
well, what I need to work on. Bam, I got my goal for the next day.
Mhm. 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 Very interesting. Yeah, really interesting. I think and what I like about this, and one of the many things I like about this, is that it helps us reframe. I mean, of course, it's important to meet the expectations of the organization, of our job, of our boss. And I think we get lost in that. And so when we don't hit those marks, it's, well, then we're bad, or we're not enough, or we're not. But what I'm hearing you say is get clear on what's most important to you, hold yourself accountable to yourself, learn from those experiences, and then it's win win win. It's always win win win. So, God forbid you disappoint your boss, you don't meet your KPIs or whatever, there's still value there because you're learning, you're growing, you're paying attention to what's most important to you, right? Am I getting this right? And so
Absolutely.
there's value. And the other thing that I really like about this, I talk with clients all the time about what's your Jenga piece? What's the one thing that you can do, like in a game of Jenga, that will make the biggest difference? And let's put our energy on that instead of all the other blocks, all the other things, all the other distractions, to get clear and focus on what are these three things. And it's always funny, it's always multiples of three, which I find really interesting.
Danny, I have to tell you, I absolutely love that. Like, let me give an example of that. And now we're going to relate it to a sport because sometimes it helps to look outside yourself.
Yes,
Well,
yes.
a lot of people relate with golf, right? So, because a lot of people, maybe many of your listeners play golf. In some way, people often can relate with golf. So I'm coaching student athletes, and I'm coaching quite a few that are in this shooting in the 70s for 18 holes, which is a really good scores.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good. And
Okay.
then I have some that are right on the edge. They're in the low 80s.
Okay.
Okay. They have all the skills and abilities to shoot in the 70s,
Huh.
and they're not there yet. So
Oh,
imagine the frustration. So
yes.
when we look at it, we go to our process, and we go to, what is the measure telling us? So we look at the individual measures, fairways, greens, number of putts. These would be measures, and they tell us what you need to improve on. So putting is on the putting green and how many it takes to get in the hole. You want to average at least two or less. And if you have three putts, right there, it's impacting you from getting in the 70s. So what do they need to work on? They need to work on their putting, right? Specific competitive practice. And by the way, it's competitive because how do we perform in stress? We know how to practice and do it competitively. So, as an example, I might develop a plan, a practice plan of how they can get better at putting in a competitive environment so that when they go to play in the tournament, they will have addressed their putting opportunities and potentially execute such that they will begin to hit in the 70s. So that would be like an example. and
Great
and
example.
I liked your term because I've been using this. Many of these golfers have really good skills, and so the key question is, what is the biggest bang for the buck? What are the three things that are going to help you the most? It often can be mindset. Like, I
Yeah,
can't get
right.
bummed that I'm shooting in the 80s. I have to know I have the skills and abilities, and I know I can do it. So my mindset needs to be, I got to learn from each shot. So
That's great, Mary. Do you think, and has your experience been that it just occurs to me that without having a conversation around this, it's really hard to embody or understand or learn. Can we have those conversations with ourselves and get all that learning, or
absolutely.
is it important? Okay.
I think, by the way, that's a great question. As a coach, I'm trying to do that, to be the mirror for them to see it and then develop the skills. It takes practice. And it is very helpful to have the coach as your mirror because you can't always see
Exactly.
outside of yourself. Similar to business coaching,
Exactly. Yes.
think about when we're leaders and we need, I mean, how we often say every person needs a coach, right? Because they're our mirror,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of yes and yes,
Mm-hmm.
I do want them to learn these things, and yet when we collaborate, the learning can be grown even more.
That's right. That's right. And I would, and I imagine, if I'm working with you, I'm getting all the mirror questions, getting all that when you and I are not working together, I can take some of that with me. Like I learn from you, I learn how to coach myself better by having an external coach. And then of course it's limitless because the more I work with you, the better I can manage myself and the better. So I think this is a good testimonial for why a good coach is important, right? Whether it's leadership, management, or sports. Um, Mary, are there anything else that you could share with us around specific techniques, hacks, things that you do with your athlete clients that my managers and leaders can do? So things like you and I have talked about the power of visualization, for instance. You talked
I
about
Yeah, like before, one key thing, we do a lot of breathing and visualization. So the visualizing, and there's two ways to look at this. Visualization is you see yourself doing it. So that helps really with the self-image too, right? Because
yeah,
you see yourself.
yeah,
Then there's rehearsal where you're actually doing it. Your body is feeling it. So that has a lot of value. And the breathing thing, it's huge. I cannot tell you how it helps people with in preparation for a big event, and also those that might get anxious thoughts or a little bit of performance anxiety, is that we really practice breathing on a daily basis. Even if you just practiced it before you went to bed at night, because it often helps people sleep, you could start out 2 minutes at night before you go to bed and, basically either feel your breath, see your chest rise, hear it, or use all your senses, whatever works for you. So that would be one key thing. Um, Along with that would be affirmations. Like what are the three things that I need to do in I am statements that help me accomplish my goal or help me be who I want to be. And a really good starting one that I like to start with is, I do the best in the moment. Like, you
mm-hmm,
may not have the best outcome, but you give your best effort. And no matter
mm-hmm,
what happens, second,
mm-hmm,
I'm going to learn and grow from each experience.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Right.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
then the idea that when you do one and two, I'm getting a little bit better every
I
day.
love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then look at after a long time, this is actually a John Wooden quote, is that if you get a little bit better every day, and John Wooden's a famous basketball coach. I realize with my younger people, they don't know who John Wooden is. So
Neither
John Wooden is a
neither do
famous
your older
basketball
people.
Yeah. He won many national championships in basketball at UCLA. So if you get a little bit better every day, after a while, you're a lot better.
Yes, yes,
Isn't
yeah.
that awesome?
I know it's so yes, and I think we forget about that things like that. Yeah, it's not the thing itself, it's the consistency, the discipline, it's the little bit at a time. I think of the metaphor of a ship. If you start a ship and you just move it 1 degree over watch how far off base it gets by the time it gets to where it's supposed to go, right? Because it's just that one difference. So that's almost the negative of it. All right. So I heard you say it. So visualization. And when you say breathing, um, I think I know what you're talking about, but do you have a specific breathe? So you talked about breathing with just staying in touch with the sensory input. Is there anything else about breathing
Yeah,
that you?
yes, there is. So I'm going to suggest it in two contexts. One is to train our body and our brain is to do 2 minutes before you go to bed. And
Mm-hmm.
again, you're not thinking of anything, you're in the moment. And if you're thinking, then you're not in the moment and you're doing the 2 minutes of the breathing and you're noticing with your breath, feeling it, hearing it, or seeing it. So that's one piece. Another thing with breath is relation to performance. Okay, so we get in a moment. Oh, you and I actually talked about this on another situation. Anyways, if you need to get used to taking a breath and just pausing, and if there's something that's just popped up, pause, reflect, and consciously choose. Because so often we do something right away and we're in our fight or flight brain. And we want to be in the moment game, which is I take a breath. This is so powerful. I pause, whether you're in performance or leadership or whatever, you reflect. So you give your uh, mind a moment, and then you consciously choose. You just
Mm-hmm.
don't react. You're consciously choosing what my response is going to be,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it kind of leads to my only other thing that I want to make sure, because this is something that many of my student athletes have told me. Like I've asked them, what is the biggest thing? If I were to ask you, what would the biggest thing that I helped you with? Like one particular one when she was graduating. And she said, when you had us work on our values, you and me, and I identified the values. Once I knew that, those were, as you say, coach, my guideposts. So if I had relationship issues, that this happened to be a female and she was graduating from high school. When I had relationship issues, I let those be my guideposts and I
Yeah,
knew my decision were in line with that. And as a result, I really didn't worry. She felt like she made better decisions. I'm thinking, well, I'm going to keep that one.
I love that. Yeah,
Isn't that awesome?
yeah, that really is. Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. Work, and you said this, but working with organizations, we oftentimes as a consultant and coach, I start with mission, vision, values. What is your purpose? What is your vision? What are your values? It's it's the same thing, right? To work on ourselves, to be clear about our purpose, our mission, our vision. Where do we want to be? And then how are we going to get there? That's the deeply held personal values that your client said, your student athlete said, that you said are guideposts. And I love that, right? So when I don't know where to go, I go to my values, right? Or where I'm someplace where I'm not sure I'm supposed to be, go to my values and see if, did I make a wrong turn somewhere and go back to
And
those.
exactly. And you know, the beauty of this is we often hear about the word confidence. I'm going to come back to when you know your values and you know your vision of who you want to be and where you're going. Almost always that helps with your authenticity and your confidence.
Love
I'm not
that.
saying there aren't other hurdles.
Yeah.
That's a key step in that process of becoming more confident and
Yeah.
authentic.
Yeah. Outstanding, Mary. Mary, thank you so much. This was terrific. I really, I think I appreciate, and I know my listeners really appreciate your insight, your experience, reframing and understanding how it doesn't have to be complicated to do really well, but you have to do the work, right? And it's as opposed to reacting or as opposed to reacting, we want to respond, we want to be thoughtful, we want to pause, all those things. So really super helpful. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you want to say before we say goodbye?
I just want to say thank you for having me. It's been a great conversation and I really appreciate it and enjoy it. Have enjoyed it.
It was super fun on my end too. Mary, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you or find you or get in your universe if they want to stay connected
Yes,
with you?
Mary, my email is mary@gamechangercoaching.life.
Okay.
Mary@gamechangercoaching.life. And then my website is gamechangercoaching.life.
Perfect. Awesome. So,
Yes.
listener, I very much encourage you to be in contact, connect with Mary, get on her mailing list, talk to her about the challenges that you're having as a manager and a leader, and start to understand there are different ways of framing those challenges as opportunities. And I think Mary would be a great coach on that. Mary, thank you so much. Really appreciate it, and looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks, Danny.
All right. And dear listener, thank you for joining us. This is Danny Ceballos with the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.